the Army did not prepare me to transition to, the film industry, for example, and vice versa. Film industry does not necessarily put themselves in position to take in military officers or military veterans.
Hey, got something really cool I wanted to run by and let you know what's going on. So I'm starting a group that will start taking a deep dive into each one of these episodes. So we'll collectively come together and talk about the shows, talk about the guests. I'll be bringing back some of the guests to do some Q&A sessions and really take a further dive into their story, their journey, the episode, talk about, maybe some of the things you wish I would have asked on the episodes, do some Q&A sessions and the like. As a friend put it to me, it's really like a book club, but for the podcast. So a couple times a week, we'll go in, we'll break down the favorite shows of the week, and have cool discussions around everything that we've heard, we've learned, and want to know about their journey. Some of these guests will come in and they'll teach part of, what makes them awesome at what they do. And then, as always, I'll be providing regular value and content in this group. It's really cool because this only is going to cost $5 a month to join this group. And you'll be able to come in, interact with everybody else in there. So I'll put a link right in the show notes for this that you can jump in, come have a conversation with us, and we will really deep dive into each one of these episodes and help us all rise up together. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's going to be a great show today. Having the show wasn't something I started out to do. But the day I found out somebody wanted to really sponsor the show was a really, really cool experience. So, guys, I want you to take some time to go check out Point Blank Safety Services and their new nonprofit, Blue Family Fund. These guys are doing some really, really cool things. And Stacy McGovern, who's the CEO over there, has been a dear friend, and she was a guest on the show. But these guys are literally taking, the off-duty officers and putting them out in security guard role. And here's what's cool about it is, as they're protecting our lives, they don't make a whole lot of money in that regard. No first responders are paid for the value they provide for our safety and our health and taking care of us. So these guys, Stacy and her team over at Point Blank Safety Services have really found a cool way to give back to these officers by helping them provide an additional income so they can continue to support and protect us. So do me a favor, guys. Seriously, go check out pointblanksafety.com and then go look at their nonprofit, which is Blue Family Fund. Now, this nonprofit was created because of the success of Point Blank Safety Services. They wanted to give back to the families of fallen officers and be able to give scholarships away to the families of current, police officers. So do me a favor. It would mean the world to me if you would go out and help support this show by supporting Point Blank Safety Services and their nonprofit Blue Family Fund. Just tell them Donnie has sent you. You heard it on Donnie Success Champions, and Stacy will take a tremendous and amazing care of you. Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, it's going to be a fun episode. I'm having Andy Mazeika on here, and we're going to talk about his time from going through West Point and how a board game really changed a lot of the trajectory of his life. So we're going to talk about his film career, we're going to talk about his military career, and then we're going to talk about this really wicked card game that he's come up with and how literally a game night with a friend and his parents playing board games and his brother's birthday helped create what he's creating now. It's going to be a great episode. All right, guys, it's going to be another fun episode today. I'm bringing you Andy Mazeika. And let me tell you, I had to practice that last name like 2 or 3 times before I got the damn thing right. But he's got a really cool story. He's got some really cool things that he's into. I'm looking forward to talking about. So, Andy, welcome to the show, my friend. Please tell us your story.
Donnie, thanks for bringing me on. Yeah, so interesting about me. So like you, I'm also a military veteran. I think that's where a lot of this story just really starts. Is that so?
What branch?
Yeah, I was an Army officer for almost 6 years. Yeah,
all right,
I know.
Stop being Army.
Did the episode just end right now?
Yeah, no, it's done. It's done. I can't have Army guys on here.
Yeah, so I grew up in Orange County, California. Went to Mission Viejo High School, and from there I actually went to United States Military Academy, a preparatory school, so the West Point Prep School, because I was really driven academically, but I wasn't quite disciplined. So West Point said, you're good, but not good enough yet. So they sent me to prep school. And so I went to the prep school for a year, went to West Point, commissioned as an Army officer there. And while at West Point, I walked on to the Army football team. So, and I think that's where a lot of like my work ethic comes from, just working there. And I was really fortunate to say that, Coach Bobby Ross was my, coach for 3 out of the 4 years at the academy. So I'm really happy.
I think that's awesome, but here's what I love telling everybody is, Army's got a football team, Navy's got a football team, and everybody's like, where's the Marine Corps football team? I'm like, dude, we're too busy defending a country to worry about a damn quarterback, so.
But I think you mentioned this in one of your previous episodes. Yeah, Navy usually, takes in the Marine Corps. So Navy football team is technically the Marine Corps football team, so.
Well, we always say that we're a department of the Navy. It just happens to be the men's department, so.
I also remember that when I talk to people in the Navy.
I'm going to get down for that.
That's so funny. Yeah. So I commissioned as an Army officer, spent almost 6 years in the Army. But while at the academy, while in the Army, I've always had a passion for film and creativity. And it was something I told myself, I'm going to make the most of my time in the Army. And so if things don't pan out like I'd like, then I'll, definitely, just cut ties and pursue a career in film. So like I did all these great things in the Army, went to Ranger School, graduated from there, learned a lot about myself while at U.S. Army Ranger School. Did one deployment to Iraq, August 2010 or 2011. And I tried going Special Forces, but Special Forces was like, we're not interested in you. So, which is fine. And at which point, I said, okay, I'm going to pursue this career in film. And so I did all this work to prep my exit, did all these little film projects before I got out, applied to various film schools. I was actually even because my last duty station was at Fort Bliss. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the film Fort Bliss with Michelle Monaghan and Ron Livingston. He was in Band of Brothers and Office Space. But anyways, they filmed Fort Bliss there, and I helped out behind the scenes because I want to prep myself as best I can for this exit. And so, long story short, they actually end up throwing me into the film. So I have a very small speaking part in that film. So
usually when somebody says I have a small role, they're like some dude that's like in a back corner that you got to squint to see, right? Like I had a buddy in Born on the 4th of July.
Oh wow.
Like, there's a scene when Tom Cruise, is getting out of the car. If you squint really hard, you'll see that I'm standing right there. I'm like, and every time I try and look for him, like I have no clue that's you, right?
Yeah. Well, fortunate for me, I have the exact opposite experience. It's like it's as clear as day. It's like you definitely see me in my face. You definitely see like my name tag on my ACUs at the time. It's like it's pretty cool. I'm really happy that I was able to get that experience. So exiting out of the Army, it's so unique trying to pursue a career in film because not very many people do that. It's not your typical, military veteran is not all that creatively inclined necessarily, or at least I think here's a better way of looking at it. The Army did not prepare me to transition to the film industry, for example, and vice versa. Film industry does not necessarily put themselves in position to take in military officers or military veterans.
Well, let's clear this up altogether. The military doesn't prepare anybody for transition of any sort.
Yep.
So, when you go from military to civilian life, there might as well not even be a transition program the way it's currently handled and done. I mean, you go through TAPT or whatever it's called nowadays, and kick you on the way out the door. So, flip it. Civilian companies have no clue how to work with veterans because they don't understand the translation of how everything works.
Well, I guess to my point, though, I was trying to demonstrate. So, as an officer, there's all these different headhunting firms. For example, there's Bradley Morris, there's Cameron Brooks. They have all these Lucas Group, all these different groups are just waiting to help military officers find jobs elsewhere. And so I try to go around that as best, because they couldn't help me. They couldn't help me with what I wanted to do. They had all these different operations jobs, sales jobs, wherever in different parts of the country. And I was like, I need to be in Southern California doing this. It's like, we really can't help you. I'm like, all right, well, fortunately for me, getting out, my wife's from Orange County, just like me. And so, both our parents, have homes there. So we had a good little launch point, so to speak, to kind of set us up for success, financially speaking. So it wasn't all that daunting. However, looking back, I'm like, I probably could have done things a lot differently. I did get a lot of experience along the way, which is really good. Here's a really good example. So I was one of the best best moments I had getting out of the Army was I was a writing intern for producer over at Walt Disney Studios for about 6 months, a guy by the name of Jim Whittaker. And Jim Whittaker, he did films like The Finest Hours, about the most daring U.S. Coast Guard mission in history. And then also he did that film recently, A Wrinkle in Time, with Oprah Winfrey and Reese Witherspoon. Yeah. So he let me, it was really, a wonderful experience being in his office, working with him for about 6 months. And the funny thing about him is that, I kind of know that I guess he had an uncle that went to West Point, which I didn't know. And what's even crazier about that is that his uncle died in the Battle of the Bulge, which I thought was pretty. Yeah, so that was pretty astounding hearing that. But anyways, so I left the opportunity for another, a fellowship with a commercial production company, and that one was good. I got to see what commercial production companies are like, but it's a completely different world than the studio life. And in the process, I was helping this particular company develop a documentary on this rock star, and I try not to smile too much as I tell the story, because so they asked me one day to help out one of their guys who works for the company, a guy by the name of Billy. Can you get this hard drive out to Billy's house? And I'm like, okay. And the office was in Santa Monica. I drove all the way to Burbank. And so sure enough, I waste 2-3 hours, driving out to this guy Billy's house. I'm like, who the heck is Billy? And I knock on his door. I'm calling him on his cell phone. Sure enough, he walks out in his driveway. It's Billy Zabka from The Karate Kid.
Yeah.
He's only wearing a T-shirt and a towel, and I hand him this hard drive because he was working with a company that I was working with to help develop this documentary on this Japanese rock star. His name is Yoshiki. I guess he's one of the godfathers of rock. But anyway, so that was really
you totally go fanboy on a guy in a towel.
The funny thing is this: No, it didn't click at the moment when I saw him. When I was like, why do you look so familiar? And he was waiting for me to say something like, "Oh, you're Billy Zabka." I was like, so I just held off. So I guess he was expecting me to be somewhat starstruck when I saw him, but because I was looking at him because I was like, you look so familiar, and I didn't want to be rude and stare at him too long and try to for it to click. So I just. Yeah. He's wearing a T-shirt and a towel. I was like, this is such a random encounter with a really famous person. So, but that whole experience, the commercial production company, was good through and through. We got to see how they do stuff. And then here's another good thing is that although I didn't get into film school, while I was prepping my exit, I became really good friends. He's a great guy. He actually went to USC for film. He's Army officer just like me, and his name is Nate Ellis, great guy. And so Nate and I were both applying at the same time, and we randomly found each other on a random website. It was studentfilms.com. And I joke with him, I always tell people Nate's the best thing I've ever found on Craigslist, is what I tell people. But I bring this up because
visions of you two guys swiping left, swiping right, and you found each other, online. But
that's exactly how it happened. No, but I bring this up for a reason. So, and this actually lends into what I'm doing now. So I'm still very adamant about getting into film. But I guess the way I see it is that while I didn't get into USC's film program, I applied twice. Didn't get in. But Nate was very welcoming to help, allowing me to help him make several films. And in the process, he essentially lent me his USC network of friends to basically, help other people out, get to know people, work on other projects, and get experience, which I thought was really helpful. And so that's why, to Nate's credit, he's a great guy. He's going to be really successful. I actually helped him make a film that he got Best Filmmaker, I think, or Best Director for at the GI Film Festival 2 or 3 years ago. So I got an executive.
Here's what I like about this is you sharing this kind of stuff is it's showing people how much work you're putting in to try and start, a behind the scenes film career.
Yep.
I think a lot of people think that they want to be in movies or they want to produce movies or whatever else. I think there's still some of that thought process of, I can wake up tomorrow and, have this massive career because I'm just good at what I do type things. I really enjoy how much crap you've gone through to try and find some success in this. And I love the networking play into this whole thing, because for me, that's how anybody gets successful in any world, is through the network.
Absolutely. I think that's just been a great part about this too. Just talking and, just talking about my story with Nate, and then just that network, and just how that's played into what I'm doing, what I'm trying to do now, and then how it's going to, who knows how it manifests later on down in life. It just goes to show you that it's really like put yourself out there and just try to be as helpful as possible. Things will eventually work your way, one way or the other. So, but yeah, so like I helped Nate make a whole bunch of films, became really good friends with a whole bunch of his talented, classmates from USC. And so,
I gotta ask, any films anybody knows?
No, it's a lot of like, student film, short films for typical USC like curriculum films essentially. So nothing too crazy, nothing well known as of yet.
I want one favor someday though.
Yeah.
Someday when you get really famous in the whole film thing, I just want to be an extra in a movie. I don't even need lines. I just want to be that guy. Like, you squint really hard, you can see me in the back there, right? So.
I'll see if I can make that happen. That shouldn't be too difficult.
All right.
Yeah. Another cool thing is, so like working with, Nate, but there's also there's actually a network of veterans out in LA. It used to be called Veterans in Film and Television. Now they changed the name to Veteran Media and Entertainment. And so what was cool is one of the first things I did when I came out here is I actually tapped that network too. And so in the process, Nate helped me with this too. And I worked with a couple other really talented people. A really wonderful guy by the name of Alan Petrzejewski, who's a Navy veteran. And then worked with a really talented gal she's really starting to take off as an actress. Her name's Jennifer Marshall. She was, I think she's still on TNT's The Last Ship. I haven't really kept up with that show, but she was actually on season 2 of Stranger Things on Netflix.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then another wonderful guy who's in the back of my mind for writing stories and films and screenplays is a guy by the name of Blaine Gray, who's actually on this most recent season of Westworld as well on HBO. So so it's out of virtue of just nugging away and just working with all these people. Someone becomes famous, like, hey, I know that person. Hey, I worked with them on this project. So I'll have to send you the film that I made with them. It actually got top 20 finalists in this one film contest. It was like the 100-hour film race.
We'll put that in the show stuff too. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So I guess, but what's been really good about, working in film, trying to be a filmmaker and just trying to make all these things happen. It's just, you kind of have to think, to be really good at this, you have to think like a business person is the way I look at it. And I find that, and I think some of you brought up, I meant to mention this earlier, like how much work it takes to be a successful filmmaker. You might as well say, whether you want to be an actress or producer or writer, director, whatever, you have to go in this saying, not with the expectation that this is going to be easy, but from a daunting, from a responsible perspective, it's like being successful in the film industry is as, successful, or requires the same amount of success it takes to like create something like Facebook. Like right. Those like lightning in a bottle moments where it's like, it's so rare. You have to be willing to be like, this may not work out.
I mean, lightning in a bottle. I mean, that's such a 0.0001% chance of ever happening. And what I think is funny, and I love telling my buddy Cody Jinks' story. So country singer Cody Jinks is starting to get some fame. He just had a number 4 hit album out there in the country music charts, and he's 100% independent. So the big label companies hate him because he's gone around the system, and he made number 4. But people are starting to say, he's an overnight success. What's funny about that is Cody and I were bartenders at the White Elephant Saloon in Fort Worth, 13 to 15 years ago, maybe even longer than that. And that dude has played every crappy shithole honky-tonk in the world. And, it's finally starting to get some traction. So, yeah, that overnight success only took him, 15, 16, whatever years to make that happen.
Yeah. It's really, it requires a lot out of you. And that's why, this past year, I wrote finished a second draft of a screenplay, of a sci-fi screenplay I've been wanting to make into a feature, and kind of solicit for agencies and representation and stuff like that.
And there's going to be a cool portion in there about this really awesome podcaster,
Yeah. But in the process of writing this, when I got to, at the end of like the second draft, it was like summer of last year. I was really tired. I was like, I'm just going to take some time off. And in the process of just kind of like taking a break from it, I was like, I really gotta because I want to go at it again, but I want to do it over a shorter period of time with more focus and more energy. And I'm starting to, and that's where I got the bug of like, maybe you should, try to become more of an entrepreneur, try to like detach from your day job little by little. And so that's when, and this is what's really interesting about this is, so like I randomly thought, like how much does it cost to make a card game, and how much could I sell it for? As random, because I'm really into board games, really into card games, really into tabletop games, and so is my family. It's so funny because I had like a little, I played board games a lot as a kid, but I got reintroduced to board games while at West Point, like my junior or senior year. One of my buddies, it was after an Army football game, one of my teammates, his parents were in town. His family grew up in the Tahoe, Truckee area in California. His parents came in and they brought the game Cranium, and we played it with another buddy of ours, so like the five of us, and we had so much fun. And then just little by little over time, I was playing more and more board games, and then finally, I actually almost made a deck building game for my brother as a bachelor party gift. There was a website called, I think it was through GameCrafter.com. And so I tried, making this game tailored to my brother as a gift, but like I was using all these copywritten images I couldn't, make on the website. They wouldn't allow me to do it, of course. So I ended up just, stopping that altogether. But then finally I was like, what? I wonder how much it would cost to actually do this. And I looked into it. And from a business perspective, the overhead is incredibly minimal compared to like starting your own, like, starting a franchise, for example. It's like, at the most, maybe a couple $1,000s, depending on what type of game you want to do, especially if you're doing a card game like what I'm doing. I got curious, went on Alibaba.com, I saw like how much some of these manufacturers can make these games for. And sure enough, it's like some of these can, you can get a custom deck for like $1, in the $1 or $2 range, which I thought was pretty astounding. And you look at games that like, popular games like Cards Against Humanity, which are very simple. It's just black and white cards with text, no crazy artistry or anything. That game sells for like $20 to $25 on the U.S. market. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a huge difference. There's a huge margin there. So,
great margin.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I looked into like, okay, like what if I do this? What if I go on Kickstarter? And I found that there's a Kickstarter advisor. And so in talking with the Kickstarter advisor, I started to develop the game that I'm working on now. It's called Cartel, a card game. And so I tried doing the artwork on my own. And looking back, I showed the Kickstarter advisor, who I ended up not working with because he was way too busy anyways. And I found out later on he was launching his own tabletop game. But anyways, talking to him, showing him the artwork, he's like, wow. He's like, looks like an amateur did this artwork. I was like, I'm like, note to self, do not quit day job to start, artist career, like drawing an artist necessarily. So, yeah.
Let's back up just 2 seconds because I want to make sure everybody hears this. So you're literally still going through West Point, and a buddy's, family comes in town, and you start playing board games with them, which starts down the path of, well, maybe I can create something. Well, your brother's thing popped in there, right? And you start figuring this all out. What's surprising to me about that is when I was in the Marine Corps, we didn't play board games, but we played a damn lot of spades, and there was a lot of other games like that. So I find it really interesting. And I wonder, as if those parents hadn't come into play, do you think you would have found board games?
I think so, just because of my brother, his wife is really big into board games as well. So I think at some point or another I would have, hit a board game. And I think I had friends in the Army who are also really big into board games too. And so that's kind of funny, is that there's actually something of, I say this with, in a very endearing way. There's actually a pretty decent nerd subculture within the military. You have guys who play video games. You have guys who are really into movies and comics and whatever. I think those type of creative materials, resources kind of encourages those guys to walk that career path in some way, shape, or the other. I'm kind of the same way too. I think, not to go full dork, but like when I was a junior in 2001.
You learned from the movie Tropic Thunder, you don't go full retard?
Yeah. But anyway, so like an influence for me, because like, 9/11 happened when I was a junior in high school, and that's when I was applying for colleges and stuff like that. And I was like, I think I want to pursue a career in the military, at least, help out with what's going on in the world. And at the time, Lord of the Rings came out. And to me, Fellowship and Brotherhood and stuff like that, and just well-crafted film, that really kind of motivated me, gave me some motivation to walk down. It was other, things that motivated me too. But yeah, so there's a strong
key point though, because I we're so influenced by the world around us that, I love telling. Harry Potter is what got me back in the book. That story was the first time I picked up books again. So because a friend that I worked with said, hey, I know you don't read, but try this book. And, I devoured that book in 24 hours. But, I think that's a key point, that you got to pay attention to the world around you, because you never know what's going to spark that thing. It's like me starting a podcast. I was a guest on a bunch of shows, just happened to go onto a really crappy show. And I'm like, okay, if this dude can do it, I can do this, right?
Yeah.
Podcast form. So I love that slight inspiration by the Lord of the Rings. That's fun.
Yeah, no. So, yeah, it's such a great story. It really, really well made film. And of course, that also inspired me to want to, maybe pursue a career in film, because that's like my go-to in a lot of ways for a lot of different things. I think Tolkien is one of the greatest writers of all time, personally. But back to the whole board gaming thing. So going back to the Kickstarter advisor, him dogging me for my artwork. So what that turned into was he recommended, hey, you should probably hire an artist to do the cards. And what I did was, as a starting point, is I took a game that I really liked playing, because originally I wanted to make a deck building game. And deck building games, there's so many different ones out there. They have some really cool ones. My wife and I really enjoy the DC Comics deck building game. I'm more of a Marvel guy, but there's a DC Comics deck building game, which is great. There's a Marvel Legendary game, which is pretty good, but it's a little more.
I want to make sure I understand. When you say deck building, walk me through that. So I think I understand it. What is deck building really? So
deck building is not. So when I say deck building, some people are like, oh, you mean like Magic the Gathering? It's like, no, not like Magic the Gathering. That's more of that's a much greater commitment. I guess that technically that is a deck building game in some respect, but deck building is you start off with like 10 basic cards, and in the case of the DC deck building game, 7 of them are like punch cards, 3 are like vulnerability cards, and what they are, and what you're essentially doing is using those cards to buy better cards in the game, and then you buy like abilities.
You're battling each other then?
Well, it's not battling each other as much as it is trying to gain victory points in the game. So they have like some supervillain cards in the game. There's like, you can play with as many as like, I think there's like 8 in the DC deck building game. You can take, you can play as few as like 4, for example, and then all the cards have associated victory points, and the supervillains obviously have like the most on there. So, and the game ends once you collect all those supervillain cards. But anyways, so what's really cool about deck building games and like the DC is like you see like you get a glimpse of like what the DC world looks like. You see like Superman's abilities, you see all Batman's equipment, you see all these different heroes that you wouldn't otherwise learn about if you weren't really into like the DC comics. And
then the overall goal then is to build the best hand. I mean, essentially.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yeah, and then you're also trying to get like weak cards out of your hand too, out of your deck, by destroying them or whatever. And it's just I recommend that game just about to anyone, because it's easy, it's quick to pick up, it's quick to play. But so what I wanted to do is this feature that I was writing, the sci-fi one. I wanted to turn that, because I still want to make that in a graphic novel at some point. But I was also like, I would love to make this in a deck building game, just from not just from the business perspective, but also because you hear about like writers, always talk about world building. I'm like, that would be a really fun way to build out this world for what it is I'm trying to write. And I think that when you have visual references to go off, it makes it really easy. And I think that's part of the reason why George Lucas was able to really sell Star Wars, because when you go back to his story, and I think he's a really good example of like that, someone who had that entrepreneurial mindset. Some people, give him a hard time about that because his obsession with toys. But anyways, so one of the things he did when he was pitching Star Wars is he had this artist do all these renderings of the different characters. You see all these like, original concept artwork of like, for example, like you have like R2-D2, but he's got like an extra leg or something like that. He's only got, or like a leg like poking out awkwardly. But then there's a really famous one of Luke facing Darth Vader in like this dark hallway where they both have their lightsabers, and it's like, it's really stunning, visuals that really, makes you wonder like, man, I wonder what this would look like as a movie. So anyway, so I guess that's something I want to do. But looking at from a business perspective, to make like a deck building game, because there are so many different unique cards in that deck, it would have cost me like several $1,000s just to do the artwork alone, never mind the marketing or anything else. So I went with something really simple. So like my game, there's 11 different resources. And so my artist quoted me basically like $50 a card. And so that came out to, and then there's like the backs of the cards too. And then there's a DEA card in my game, and then what I call an international trade card.
On the design aspect, just because I think that's a really cool piece, and people need to understand that it's okay to outsource things.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
It took me a while to figure it out.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes along with, and what's so great about that is the outsourcing aspect is like going back to, being a filmmaker. I'm like a director. A director can't do everything. A director essentially outsources talent to do different things. You have your director of photography, your cinematographer. You have your assistant director who keeps, who's like the first sergeant on the set, basically, who makes sure stuff is running on time and people are where they're supposed to be, lighting, sound, all these different things. You have your acting, so you're bringing all these different resources together and like creating, whether you're, making a film or creating a tabletop game, it's all the same. And that's kind of when I had this epiphany while making this game. I really didn't think that I would necessarily do this, but in the process of making this game, and I remember, and this also stems from the conversation I had originally with the Kickstarter advisor, and that is that your typical audience for tabletop games and board games, they're really into pop culture. And that's when it's just sort of hit me, where I was like, huh. And there's that comment, and then in the process of trying to market my game on Facebook, I'm like, I need more content. I need more content out there of my game, or any type of content, really, to really keep the wheels turning forward, keep my brand visible, so to speak. And so I was like thinking, like, I could potentially pay for a comic book artist to do artwork, which could also be the content for my marketing for my Facebook fan page. And so all this stuff is kind of, for lack of a better term, is very much incestuous in a way. Going Game of Thrones. Yeah. So unless someone can give me a better word, but anyways, all this stuff just kind of feeds into each other, back and forth. And so as I was marketing my game on Instagram, this comic book artist hit me up. I was like, hey, I like your game. I think your game looks really cool. And I looked at his Instagram profile. This guy does work for DC and Marvel Comics. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Guy by the name of Manuel Martinez. And so I ended up meeting him at WonderCon, and he's actually going to help me make, and WonderCon, if you're not familiar, it's actually associated with San Diego Comic-Con. It's one of the few events that's tied in with that same group, and it's in Anaheim. But anyways, Manuel, he's going to help me launch the Cartel comic series that's going to be based on the content from the game that I'm putting together. So, nice. And that's all really fun and exciting, because I've actually been, it's one of the things I've been trying to do as well, is get into comic books, because I think, again, all this stuff kind of leads into each other at some point or the other, and it's all fun. And yeah.
This is crazy. So you go from the Army, do a little bit of film work, to, you do a little bit of film work once you get out. You play in that game. You've done some student films, and you've been involved and mentored by some really cool people. And all along the way, playing board games, you have been kind of chasing this graphic thought process of creating characters, creating card games, creating board games. It's all been kind of pushing you in this direction. What I love about that is I'm a firm believer that once you start putting things out to the universe, it starts showing up to say hello. And because you start putting content out there, you ran into Manuel, who's helping you on the back end. But this all stems to, you have this kind of nerdy, geeky, whatever you want to call it, thing that you love to do, that you're turning into this kind of passion project of you. I mean, do you think this is going to be like, this is my swan song type thing? This is going to be my big thing that really puts your name on the map type thing, or?
I'm really excited about this project for a lot of reasons, just because I've been playtesting a lot more recently, and I've been like tweaking the rules here and there. And then one of the things what's been really good about my game is that, so if you go to like my fan page, you'll see what the box looks like. So it's not a cardboard box for my game. So what I did was I actually reached out to the Veteran Network, and 2 West Pointers actually came out and said, hey, we'll help you do a 3D design to make a plastic mold for the box. And it's very thematic for the game. So the game is Cartel, right? Cartel card game. One of the resource cards in the game is the smuggler card. And on the card, the image is a shipping container, a red shipping container. So the box looks like a red shipping container.
Oh, that's cool.
Where you put the cards in there. And so it's all thematic. It all comes around, full circle and in so many different ways. And so from front to back, we're sharing this game with multiple people. People look at it and they're like, they think it's really well thought out. Just the presentation, they enjoy the gameplay. Especially the last 2 playtest sessions I've had, everyone was very enthusiastic about the game. They actually thought it was a lot of fun. And so, and that made me just feel really good, because I feel like, it's coming together really well.
Yeah, well, 2 things that I ask. For me, this is 100% selfish. When you write the rules, will you write them so a Marine can understand them? I mean, you get some board games and things, and, it's like you might as well be a physicist trying to read the damn rules of the thing, right? So break it down so a Marine can understand it. 2, how do I become a character in the game? So I want to be a card.
Okay, it's really funny you asked that. Okay, because so I'm going to take my game to Kickstarter in October. You can't be a character in this game per se. However, one of the backing options I'm going to have available is, depending on how much money you back, I have to establish the dollar amount. I'm probably going to do that, as I get closer to the campaign. But there's 11 resources in the game. 10 of those resources are going to be individual story arcs for the comic series. So depending on, so there's going to be basically, 10 different backing options available. Some are going to be a little more expensive than others, because one of the cards is the pharmacist card. It looks like it's like a dude in a yellow biohazard mask. It's very reminiscent of like Walter White from Breaking Bad. So I figured that one's probably going to be the most popular one. But I'm allowing people the option to be a main supporting character in each of those storylines, and then also
literally be like this badass podcaster in your game.
Yeah. So you can be, depending on how much I'm offering, if you pay that amount, and there's only going to be 10 of those available for this Kickstarter campaign, you will be in the comic series for at least two complete cycles of the story. Beyond that, it's a complete mystery about what's going to happen to your character. Is what I'm thinking.
If I'm a figure in your story, in your game, whatever, it's going to be the most best character you have. I mean, people are going to come to it. Damn it, I'm going to make so much noise on this podcast that they do that.
But in addition to that, though, as well, because like I said, I want to make a deck building game. The follow-on game for this will be a deck building game. Those characters will also be featured in that deck building game as well. As a part of that whole Cartel universe, which would be tons of fun.
That's so cool. But I think, as much as I joke around, a lot of us that do podcasts or do public speaking or whatever, we all have that little vanity thing to us, right? That kind of thing. I think that's an enticing thing to help get a Kickstarter really going and get some funding is, hey, look, how vain are you, what I am, to want to be really a part of this thing. And it's a cool marketing ploy now, because now you got people that are investing that they're going to get, their likeness or whatever, maybe their story twist and turn to put in your stuff. Now their marketing is like, dude, you got to go play this game. Oh, by the way, the best card in there is Donnie. That's really cool.
Yeah. In addition to that, I'm going to kind of just leave you with a tease on the Kickstarter campaign about the whole, supporting character being in, the comic series and also in the follow-on deck building game. So the reveal, how I'm going to reveal that will be announced on the day of the Kickstarter, unless you subscribe to my Kickstarter updates on my website. So that will be released in advance by, I'll say, 1 week prior to at the latest. But that, I think, how I'm going to reveal it's going to be really cool. So
awesome. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So through this whole ride, I mean, you've had one hell of a journey, and I haven't even busted your chops really about being an adult playing games. You know, you dress up in wizard clothes too? No, I'm leaving that alone. You know, you're the guy, the Thursday night showing at the movie theater, all dressed up in costume. You know you are, but
no, that's not me. But I try to do that. But the problem is I'm usually the guy who likes to go opening weekend. But you know, I'm married. I got a kid. I got like a 2.5-year-old daughter who's gonna be 3 soon. And that having kids makes it so much harder to do that over time. It's just like it took me, you know. I finally saw Deadpool like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that movie came out like end of May. Or beginning of May, I think it was.
That's not a movie you can take a 2.5-year-old too. So.
No, absolutely not.
You know, maybe when she's 3, but at 2.5, absolutely not. No.
Oh yeah. By then she's got a job. She's got, you know.
Right. With this whole thing launching, which is really, really cool. It's fun. I love being a part of the story before it's something, you know, it's just kind of like documenting the journey, and I love that. Are you going to go back into the film game? I mean, is that going to be, you know, part of this whole process, or do you think this is going to be, you know, your thing?
Yeah, this is all additive, so to speak. All this stuff is going to add into each other, build off each other. So going back to having that network of USC friends. So my buddy Nate has expressed interest in helping me with future games as well. But then also some of the guys who are helping me make the Kickstarter video, you know, are USC film guys. And so that's what I got going on. And it's all, and eventually one of my other goals is to create more, to get some video content out there on social media, on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. And so that's going to require, you know, lending to the film network that I have going on. And that's definitely the goal. And I think that just having that creative content out there and just being able to reproduce it in so many different ways, it's just a really fun idea. So that's something that I really, really look forward to doing. That's why I'm very much into this. And I'm really glad I was able to share this with you, Donnie. I think this has been a really fun conversation.
Yeah, it has. I really appreciate you coming on the show and, you know, and sharing your journey. You know, it's always fun to grab a creative and hear what they've done, where they've been, how, you know, their journey goes through. Because, you know, I think a lot of people look at all that kind of stuff from a distance going, you know, wow, that would be cool. So it's really fun to let people see that, you know, they're just average people trying to chase their passion, chase their dreams, and figure it out. So that's awesome. Absolutely. Here's how I wrap up every show, and I do stump some people with this, so be forewarned. If you were going to leave my audience with a quote, a saying, a phrase, a motto, mantra, whatever, that they can carry with them on their journey, you know, something they can use when they're really stacked up against it, what would be that quote or phrase you say, you know, as you're going through it, pull this out and use it?
So I think thinking about my story, thinking about what I'm sharing with you today, I think that just being willing to look for the world to, I guess, the world is basically waiting for you to do something is the way I look at it. So specifically, like in the process of developing the artwork, I found my artist. He's actually from Norway. He's brilliant. He's actually done a couple other games too. His name is Alan Orr. He's a freaking phenomenal artist. But basically, I found him. So, like, one of the, you know, going back to the Kickstarter advisor and him recommending me, hey, go find an artist to go do the artwork. In the process of doing that, you know, I not only found Alan, I went on like Reddit and I said, seeking artists for card game, whatever. And I posted what I'm willing to pay them, whatever. And so I said, like, you know, anywhere from $750 to $1,000. And so I was flooded with all these requests to work with me. And I was just blown away because I didn't share this piece, but while I was in Iraq, that's when there's another West Point grad who I've been talking to for the longest time, you know, ever since I was a cadet. His name is Max Adams, and he's a filmmaker. And one of the things he recommended to me while I was deployed to Iraq is like, maybe you should look into, you know, getting yourself established in, you know, comic books. And that's really where that came from, because he knew how passionate I was about it. And so I didn't exactly know how to break in, but in the process of doing this tabletop game, that's when it just sort of clicked on me. It's like there are people out there who have been dying to work with people like me, who are just looking to churn out content. And the artwork, you know, and all the talent that I saw in the process of developing the content for the game, I was just blown away with. There's this one guy who was from Australia. I couldn't afford him, but I was like, oh my God. He was like, yeah, the least I could do is like $2,000 for your game. I'm like, yeah, that's out of my budget, but I basically have his name, you know, scribbled off the side for future references, where he was just, he was just so talented. I was like, this is absolutely amazing. It was on par with Like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Alex Ross and Marvel or in the comic book industry, but he has some really amazing Captain America and Superman imagery, and this guy's artwork really reminded me of that, and it was really good. I was like, wow. When I have more money later on, I'm definitely gonna send this guy an email and be like, hey, let's do some work, So, but
that's awesome.
yeah, so that's my nugget. Just be willing to reach out to the world, because the world is waiting for you. And simultaneously, I mean, that's how I was able to grow my Facebook fan base. The game is not even out, and I already have over 550 fans on Facebook. So that's really awesome. Yeah.
So, well, Andy, that's awesome, brother. I really appreciate it, dude. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing your story. And, dude, just keep going for it, man, because I think the world's got some cool things heading your way.
I appreciate it, Donnie. This has been a fun conversation. It really was.
You know what, guys? Really, thank you for listening to this episode. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun putting these together. I wanted to make sure before we get out of here that you knew what we were doing with social content. What we found was, because of the podcast, we have a unique way of helping you get your social content out on a very easy way. What we're doing is we're interviewing people, and from that interview, we will capture a lot of information that will then be turned into videos, memes, articles, all things you can use for your social content. I know, like for me, one of the biggest struggles I had was, what do I put out there? What do I say on a regular basis? Well, we'll help do all that for you. So if this is at all of interest to you, reach out to us and let us help you grow your social media channel. I can tell you I did this for my business, and my social media is completely taking off. My Instagram, since I started doing this, jumped over 10,000 followers, and it continues to grow. So if this is at all of interest to you, check the bottom of the show notes for the link that says, "Get my social content done right now."